All right, get ready, because we're diving into a book with a title you just can't ignore. Be Kind to Your Women, or The Guide to Being a Jerk.
Oh, I've heard of this one.
Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea, this isn't about pointing fingers.
Right.
It's about understanding, maybe even uncovering, a few aha moments
Yeah.
about the dynamics between men and women in relationships today.
And trust me, there are plenty of those aha moments in this book.
What really jumped out at me was how it dives right into empathy.
Not just listening, but really, truly putting yourself in another person's shoes.
Exactly. It's like you're trying to solve a puzzle, but you've only got half the pieces.
The book really emphasizes how crucial it is for men to bridge that empathy gap, especially with the women in their lives.
And it gives some really interesting examples.
One that stuck with me was how men and women often process information so differently.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, imagine you're having a conversation, right? Sharing something important. The author suggests that men might try to fit that information into their existing worldview, almost like filing it away without really budging from their opinions.
Interesting.
Meanwhile, women might process it much more deeply, incorporating it into their thoughts, their emotions, even their future actions.
Wow. It's like we're speaking two completely different languages, even when we're using the same words.
Exactly. And that's where so much miscommunication can happen.
No wonder things get lost in translation sometimes.
Absolutely.
Now, this book doesn't shy away from some pretty, shall we say, sensitive topics.
Not at all.
It dives right into things like menstruation, contraceptives, even menopause.
And it goes beyond just the biology.
Right. It's about understanding how these experiences can deeply impact a woman's life, her relationships, everything.
It encourages men to move past that surface level and become truly supportive partners.
One example that really made me think was how hormonal contraceptives can actually change a woman's sense of smell.
It's incredible, isn't it?
I mean, something we might think is a simple preference could have deeper roots that we're totally unaware of.
And that's why the book emphasizes continual learning and open communication.
It's not about having all the answers. It's about being open to asking questions, to really listening.
Recognizing that everyone's experience is unique.
Speaking of unique experiences, this book doesn't shy away from societal expectations either, especially when it comes to men.
It's about masculinity, what it means to be a man, and how those unspoken rules can really backfire.
The book uses the term toxic masculinity.
Right, and it looks at how that can manifest in some really damaging ways.
It's like this box labeled manly, and inside you're told to suppress your emotions, never show weakness.
And then we wonder why it's so hard to build genuine, healthy relationships.
It's like trying to have an intimate conversation while wearing a suit of armor.
You might look tough on the outside, but it's stifling.
And the book takes it even further by connecting these traits to extreme examples like incel ideology.
And that's where it's crucial to remember this book isn't about demonizing all men.
Right.
It's about understanding how extreme interpretations of masculinity, fueled by things like frustration and resentment,
And entitlement.
exactly, can have really harmful consequences.
It's not about pointing fingers, it's about getting to the root of the problem.
The book seems to advocate for a more nuanced view of masculinity.
One that allows for vulnerability, empathy.
Self-expression. It's all connected.
And that brings us to the male ego and self-reflection.
Taking ownership of your actions and understanding how they impact others.
It's about confronting your own biases, being willing to admit when you're wrong.
And actively working to be better.
It's like holding up a mirror and taking a good, hard look, even at the parts you'd rather avoid.
And the book doesn't leave you hanging there.
It gives you a roadmap, right?
Exactly. It introduces us to a character named Andrew.
Oh, Andrew?
He embodies those pitfalls of a strong ego and a resistance to self-reflection.
All right, so let's unpack this Andrew example a bit.
Let's do it.
What are his flaws? What's his impact on the women around him? And what can we learn from his mistakes?
So, Andrew, he's that guy who seems to have it all together on the surface, successful, driven, confident, but the book really digs into what's going on underneath.
I'm sensing some buts here.
Oh, absolutely, because beneath that polished exterior, there's this fear of vulnerability, a real reluctance to ever admit he's wrong.
The kind of guy who'd rather jump off a bridge than say, I messed up.
You nailed it. And that's where things get really complicated in his relationships with women.
Yeah.
The book highlights how his need to always be right, combined with that difficulty owning up to his mistakes, it creates this huge communication breakdown with his partner.
It's like they're speaking two totally different languages.
And it's exhausting. I mean, who wants to be in a relationship where someone's always keeping score? The author drives home that true intimacy requires letting go of that need to be right all the time.
So true.
It means embracing vulnerability, being okay with saying, hey, I messed up.
Relationships aren't about winning or losing.
It's about growing together.
Which brings up another big thing. The book emphasizes boundaries.
Yes, those invisible lines we all have.
It seems straightforward, but it can get really tricky really fast.
Totally. And the book uses this character, Mr. Anderson, to show how someone can seem perfectly nice on the surface.
Uh-oh. I don't like where this is going.
Right. But their behavior, not so much. So there's this scenario where Mr. Anderson, he keeps giving unsolicited advice to a female colleague, and she tries to politely decline.
But he won't take the hint.
Nope. He even goes as far as putting his hand on her shoulder, like some gesture of comfort. It's just, ugh.
Yeah, not cool. Mr. Anderson, not cool at all. He probably thought he was being helpful.
Probably. But he totally overstepped a boundary.
Big time.
It highlights how what one person thinks is harmless can feel completely intrusive to someone else.
And respecting those boundaries means paying attention, picking up on those cues.
Both verbal and nonverbal.
It all comes down to respect.
Exactly. Respecting someone else's comfort above all else, and, this leads into another important topic. The book tackles men's mental health.
Oh, such a crucial conversation, and often so stigmatized.
It's like society tells men they're only allowed to feel anger or just be stoic robots.
No sadness, no fear, no vulnerability.
Right. And the book challenges that outdated idea head on.
It's not strength to bottle everything up.
It can lead to so many unhealthy coping mechanisms.
And put a real strain on relationships.
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
It's going to pop up eventually.
Exactly. With even more force.
So the book uses this character, Brian, to really illustrate this point.
He's got the successful career, the loving partner, the seemingly perfect life.
The classic image of having it all.
But underneath it all, Brian's dealing with anxiety and fear of failure.
What does that look like for him?
Well, instead of facing those feelings head on, he turns to distractions, partying, risky investments, even substance use.
He's trying to outrun his problems.
And in the process, pushing away the people who care about him the most.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is.
And it all ties back to clinging to those outdated ideas of what it means to be a man.
The book really emphasizes that vulnerability, asking for help, that's not weakness, that's strength.
It's the key to unlocking true intimacy.
Both with yourself and with others, and that takes us to another big area. The book dives into partnership, especially when kids come into the picture.
Oh, yeah, becoming a parent, talk about a crash course in adaptation.
The book challenges men to be active participants in that journey.
It's not just about bringing home the bacon anymore.
Right. It's about emotional support, sharing the load of responsibilities, moving away from those old school gender roles.
It's about teamwork.
Exactly. And the book doesn't just stop at romantic partnerships, it also digs into the profound impact of fatherhood.
Being a dad is a huge responsibility.
It is, and the book highlights the unique influence fathers have on both their sons and their daughters.
It's about more than just teaching them how to ride a bike or throw a ball.
It's about equipping them with the emotional intelligence to navigate life and build healthy relationships themselves.
So important, and there's that saying, a father's love is a daughter's first love. The book really explores that, doesn't it?
It goes deep on that, fathers being present, creating a safe space for their daughters to express themselves without fear of judgment. It's powerful stuff.
It's about being a positive role model, challenging those old ideas of what it means to be a man.
Exactly. And this goes for father-son relationships, too. The book highlights how dads can help their sons navigate masculinity in a healthy way.
Encouraging them to embrace their emotions, challenge stereotypes, be well-rounded people.
Yes. It's about breaking those cycles of toxic masculinity and raising a generation of emotionally intelligent men.
Love it. Now, shifting gears a bit, the book also tackles a huge influence on men's self-perception media.
Oh, absolutely. We're bombarded with images of perfect bodies, hypermasculinity. It's easy to feel inadequate, like you're trying to fit into a mold that was never made for you. And all that pressure can be so damaging to self-esteem and relationships. So the book talks about media literacy.
Being critical of what we consume, right? Not just passively absorbing everything.
Exactly. Questioning those messages, choosing content that aligns with our values.
It's about taking control of our media diets instead of letting them control us.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, another thing the book dives into is privilege, especially when it comes to men.
That's a big one because it can be hard to recognize those advantages you might not even realize you have.
It's like starting a race a few steps ahead of everyone else without even knowing it.
And the book uses a character named Jonathan Scott to show this.
Oh, John, he's the classic self-made man, right?
Yeah.
Believes he achieved everything through hard work alone.
But the book challenges him to see how his privilege as a man and someone from a certain background might have played a role.
Because if we don't acknowledge our own privilege, we're less likely to advocate for those who don't have it.
It's about leveling the playing field so
Yeah.
everyone has a fair shot.
Exactly. And that means being aware of our biases, listening to those with different experiences, working to dismantle systems that perpetuate inequality.
Creating a more just and equitable world, it's on all of us. So let's talk about another aspect of respect. The book addresses the online world.
Ah, yes, because online interactions come with their own set of challenges.
The rules of the game are different.
Definitely. And the book gets into some tough but important stuff like online harassment, consent, even something like sending unsolicited intimate photos.
It all comes back to those same boundaries we have in the real world.
What might seem harmless can actually be really disrespectful online.
It's easy for things to get misinterpreted or blown out of proportion online.
The book uses a character named Joseph to show this. He struggles with social cues and ends up making advances that are unwelcome.
It's a good reminder that it's not always about bad intentions. Sometimes it's a lack of awareness.
And the book highlights the importance of being mindful, respecting boundaries, and being willing to learn from our mistakes.
Consent is key, and it's an ongoing conversation.
Well said. Now, another area where the book challenges assumptions is the workplace.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack there.
Right. It tackles things like the glass ceiling, the gender pay gap, those subtle forms of sexism that often go unnoticed.
Those systemic issues that can be hard to see if you're not directly impacted by them.
Exactly. And they use this character, Mr. Smith.
Let me guess, he's the I don't see gender, I just see people guy.
Bingo. But the book shows how, despite his intentions, he's unconsciously biased, interrupting women in meetings, dismissing their ideas.
Unconscious bias in action, it's insidious.
It is, and it challenges men to really examine their own behavior and be allies in creating a more equitable workplace.
It's not just a women's issue. It requires men to step up and be part of the solution.
Absolutely. And for those who resist this call to action, the book explores the consequences through a character named Alex.
Oh, Alex, what's his deal?
The skeptic dismisses the book's message as too sensitive or politically correct.
He's missing the point.
Big time. And as a result, he misses out on growth and deeper connection.
It's a reminder that inaction has consequences, both in our personal lives and in society as a whole.
Well said. So, as we wrap up, the question becomes, what will you do with this information?
Right. This book, despite its kind of cheeky title, is a call to action for men to be better partners, fathers, colleagues, humans.
It's about recognizing that empathy, respect, understanding those aren't just buzzwords, they're the foundation for building a better world.
It's about challenging those outdated ideas of masculinity and choosing a more compassionate way of being.
And it starts with each of us taking a look in the mirror, owning our blind spots, and committing to growth.
Because the world needs more men who are willing to listen, learn, and evolve, and maybe, just maybe, this book can be that nudge in the right direction. Until next time, keep diving deep.